My favorite quote is you can either defend your limitations or you can defend your health or your vision. So if you find yourself, well, I can't, or I don't know how, it's like you're defending your limitations, right? And you can choose to defend your limitations or you can choose to defend your health, right? And what you do want to do and what is doable for you.
Why is the brain gut connection so important for not just our mental health, but also healing trauma?
The brain gut connection is so important for your mental health because the saying you are what you eat? Well, it's very true. I mean, have you ever felt amazing in your body after kind of treating your stomach like a trash can, right? Because you're not coping in the ways that are actually going to support you to regulate. And we've all been there, right? We've all experienced that, felt the guilt and the shame, but our gut is really our second brain, right? And so 75 to 90% of serotonin, which is one of our happy chemicals, is produced in the gut. So we don't have enough good bacteria and bad bacteria, aka a good balance of probiotics and prebiotics, and our habits aren't really supporting our mental health, right? We're going on our phone first thing in the morning, we're not getting enough sunshine, all of those things are then going to make it very difficult for our gut to produce those good feeling hormones. And if you literally don't have it in your body, you're not going to feel it. And it's like one of those things where you're like, why do I feel like this? Right. But then when you actually audit what you ate in that day, is it supporting your mental health or is it worsening it? Because regardless of what is kind of going on, the person who is experiencing that trauma, but is, taking the steps to make the small steps to nourish their gut is going to feel better than the one that's not. So the gut is really home to your mental health. And if you feel like you can't control of your mind at times and that trauma brain is coming in, focusing on the things that you can control can support you in allowing your mental health to be more one of the controllables.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I talk about this a lot. This comes up often in survivor school. Does not matter whether we're talking about our physical health, our relationships, our finances, right? And our health, our happiness and our well-being and sort of all the four pillars of survivor school. This same idea comes up so often is that trauma is not a mental health problem.
Mm.
It's actually a physical health problem. Like there's this Bessel van der Kolk wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's this, I don't want to say new age or new wave. It's really this new understanding we have in neuroscience about how trauma lives in the body, and that the thoughts and emotions that we kind of encompass as mental health are really just a byproduct of what's going on in the brain and the body. So this is huge. This is really, really awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. Can you tell us a little bit about your credentials?
Yes. So I'm a holistic nutrition and training coach. I am certified through ISSA, which is the International Sports Science Association. I'm also certified in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. So we use a lot of that work with our clients because it's huge, right? And certified through ACE for personal training. So I do everything online. And I've have over 8 years of experience at this point, and I'm very passionate, specifically, yes, about like nutrition training, but more of the behavior change, the psychological and spiritual aspect of changing your habits and embodying that version of you that does have the mindset and the wellness routines and the body and the health that you want, right? And it's an embodiment. So that's really what I do and what I love.
I know that you have a background in, you're a certified nutritionist and fitness expert. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this, and how it sort of cultivated your career to understanding this really important connection?
I got to the point where I was like, I want to do this for other women. Like, I want to help other women break free from the overeating and restricting cycles and helping them understand that like, it's not a lack of, willpower or I'm just not in control, even though it feels that way. It just means that you have blind spots. And if we can fill those blind spots with science-based nutrition and wellness, and you give your body what you need, your body's not going to crave the things that you think it craves all the time. I think it's a perfect segue too, because you talk about like it's not a mental health thing, it's a physiological thing, and the mental health is like it's like a cause and effect, right? And so for me, you know, growing up, I was always an athlete, but then there comes a point where you start to become conscious, right, about your weight and your body image. And you weren't conscious about it, you didn't really think about it. And then it's like that awakening happens. The inner critic is born in that area. And so what happened to be something around started with like fueling my body for sports, then became something that turned into restricting food, to be light and to, be thin and skinny and to weigh 98 pounds forever, which wasn't going to happen. But that was just my brain, right? And I think it was what, 98 pounds, like in fucking fourth grade. Like, I don't even know, but like I was just like in that headspace. And then it kind of one of those things that snowballs, right? Especially growing up in the early 2000s. Um, that like skinny, like that was just very much the thing kind of growing up. So I really grew up, I think probably both of our generations and even the generations before grew up in that, but like really in your face of like the skinny and diets and all of that stuff. So I then went to college and I was a big party girl. And, I was just binge drinking and binge eating. And all of a sudden, I was up 25 pounds. And I didn't even realize till I saw a photo of myself. And I was like, is that what I look like? I looked so puffy and, bloated. And I just didn't really recognize myself. And what was interesting is that you don't realize that it's happening until you're there and then you look at a photo or you just are in your body every single day. And so that's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I hired a nutrition coach of my own to really help me actually get on stage. So I did compete in bodybuilding for a few years in the bikini division. I felt like I needed a sense of like discipline and athleticism that I was kind of missing. And it really did do a lot for me. However, it did also trigger a lot of binge eating that started to occur. So there's a difference between overeating and binge eating. And I always like to make this difference because I think a lot of times people use overeating and binge eating in the same and they're not the same. And so I would struggle with binge eating. So literally like blackout. I'm like stuffing my face while I'm moving into the cabinet, while I'm making something else, very much like hiding what I was eating because I could tell that you could eat a bag of chips, a full thing of Doritos in front of somebody, but you're not going to eat 7 Nutella sandwiches in front of somebody, right? Like you're gonna like be in the kitchen, hiding, and it kind of just creates a lot of that shame. So I got to the place where I really wanted to solve this problem. I was like, I'm tired of binge eating. I'm tired of this cycle, and I want to fix it. And so it brought me to the point where I tried to hire another coach. And this was a kind of like a big moment for me where she said, look, your binge eating is not a mental thing, it's a physiological thing. You're not eating enough calories, you're not eating enough protein, you're not eating enough fiber. And it totally triggered me because at the time I was like, no, it's totally mental. Like, you don't get it. Like, I can't control myself around food. Like, it's like 7 o'clock on the dot. I'm back in the kitchen. It's a mental thing. And once I actually started to work with my coach and get education, and I actually started to track my intake, not to restrict my food, but to make sure that I was eating enough because it's very easy to, oh, I'm going to eat intuitively, but you can't really eat intuitively if you're binge eating and under eating and restricting and you don't know how much you're eating every single day. So I started to actually gain awareness of my intake, make sure I was eating enough, make sure that I was being aware of, oh, I'm finding myself in the kitchen, which means that I'm, avoiding something. What is it that I'm avoiding? And what is it that I really need? And being the pattern interrupt while I was properly fueling my body at the same time.
This
So,
is so, so huge. You really hit on something. Um, is so important. Like I just got goosebumps because you said something, and I'm going to repeat it in a second here. And you said it, and I was like, wow, yeah, that's a really good point. And then I was like, what? It came in layers. It was like, wow, that's a really good point. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. And let me kind of explain this for anyone who didn't catch this. You had this realization and this huge shift in binge eating was not it's not a mental thing. You weren't doing it because you were eating your feelings. It
Right.
wasn't something it's not a discipline thing, like you said. It is not um a willpower thing, right? This
Mhm.
isn't just a like figure out the sad feelings you're having and then you won't have to eat your feelings anymore. This is why we don't this is why when we're working with trauma, we don't go to, okay, what are you thinking and what are you feeling and what are your thoughts, and let's, unpack that and we'll give you a hug. I mean, we'll give you a hug if you need a hug for sure, but it's driven by physiological responses. Your body was you were eating compulsively, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is gave me goosebumps. You were not eating because of mental health. You were binge eating because your body was just completely taking over, and you needed the calories, you needed the nutrients. Your body was doing it for you, and it's why it feels like you have no control over it, and it's
Yeah.
why this is humongous for everyone. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough, that the shame comes from, why can't I just stop? Why can't I stop at one Nutella sandwich? Why can't I
Right.
just have a cookie? Why is it that you're binging and just consuming at this level? And this is neurobiological. This is because your body's just not getting enough of what it needs. Like,
A hundred
simply, right?
percent.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
no, 100%. And there's a spectrum of where a lot of women are at, but a lot of the women that I work with, they come to me and they're like, well, I do eat protein. Well, I don't eat that bad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like, I eat fruits and vegetables. And it's like, well, yeah, you're eating based off of recollection. You're not actually, you couldn't tell me how much grams of protein you had in the day. And it's like if I were to ask you, RC, like, how much grams of protein did you have today?
I happen to know my boyfriend made me an omelet this morning with eggs and spinach because I was craving it. As he was
Yeah.
leaving the bedroom this morning, I screamed down the stairs. And by the way, this is really interesting. I never ask him for anything. Like,
Yeah.
I don't ask him to cook for me. I don't ask him for anything. I'm very much the giver. I'm the service provider typically in the relationship. And as he was leaving the bedroom, I was like, spinach and egg omelet, please. Like, and he's like, okay. And then, like, 6 minutes later, he comes upstairs with this like beautiful omelet, and I was
Mhm.
craving it. That's all I've had for protein. I don't know how many grams that is. I just know my body wanted that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your body needed it. Your body wanted that. And the whole point, though, is like your body needs a certain amount, period. Right. And I think you have like a little bit of background, like on like macros and protein and things like that. But for those who don't, it can be very easy to be like, well, I did have protein in my meals. I am eating healthy, right? But what is healthy, quote unquote? Because a lot of times we're subconsciously restricting without even realizing it. Like when I was trying to eat, quote unquote, healthy, I wasn't, a lot of my plates were protein and vegetables, very little carbs, very little fats. Um, and I would try to intermittent fast. And it just always turned into like eating to lose weight or eating to be skinny instead of like actually eating to fuel my body. Um, and there can be like a lot of fear around that. Like, oh, like I feel that anxiousness that comes with the hunger. I know I need to give myself more food, but I don't know how much like I need. And I'm afraid that I'm going to gain weight and I'm afraid. And then we just kind of go back into those cycles. So it's 100% physiological. You need to just make sure you're eating enough and not just enough calories, but are you actually enjoying the foods that you're eating, right? Because I think a lot of times when we talk about healthy foods, it's like boring or bland, or you're kind of like eating it like with like just kind of like this face of like ill.
And that's where we think willpower has to come in, right? We think
Right.
it's like, oh, we just got to eat this gross stuff we don't even like. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely relate to that. I have had those experiences where and I love salads. I love vegetables. Like I do enjoy them quite a bit. But there, I
Mhm.
can tell absolutely just from this conversation, I'm going through like over the holidays, we just had a holiday season, and I can absolutely attribute days that I did not feel good to being like, oh yeah, because I didn't eat all day because I was crazy busy. And then all of a sudden there's this amazing box of fresh baked cookies that someone just brought over, and then that's my dinner.
Yeah.
Of course I don't feel good.
Yeah, 100%. And, like when we meal prep and then the foods go expired, it's like you have to
Yeah.
enjoy your foods. Like I used to literally get the ick looking at my meal prep, just like in my plastic Tupperware. And now I happy dance while I eat my foods and they nourish my body. And I wouldn't be able to get to this place if I didn't enjoy my foods. And it doesn't need to be a new recipe every single week. It just means season your food, cook your food, marinate your fucking food, and like make it delicious and stop overcomplicating it. I think nutrition is a big thing that we tend to overcomplicate. So, going back to the binge eating and the overeating, it's 100% physiological. Yes, there's that emotional piece, but a lot of times we make that bigger than it needs to be because it confirms our belief that we're not in control. And really, it's our body trying to communicate to us that something's missing.
So this is interesting, and we've had a little bit of this discussion before. So I've kind of got an inside scoop on this. But for anyone who's watching that wasn't there, help us understand when if you do eat what your body needs, how does that erase that compulsion and the emotional eating component? Because I think that's a big leap for people to believe that it really
Mhm.
could just be that simple, is if you just eat what you need to, the mental part goes away. So help us explain that, because it's really simple and it's hugely profound, but I think that's a really hard thing for people to disconnect from.
Yes, yes, I love it. And I'm the same way. Like, I need someone to explain the science, break it down. So, we essentially have two hunger hormones, one called ghrelin. Think of gremlin. So, it's like the little gremlin in your stomach. So, like you're hungry, whatever. And then leptin, which regulates your appetite. And it's produced in like our body fat tissue, right? So, someone who may have a higher body fat percentage, they may produce, less leptin, right? Because their body has like more than enough. Whereas for me, when I was binge eating because of bodybuilding, I was extremely lean and shredded. So the leptin was going crazy. And that's why I was just binge eating because my hunger hormones were off, right? So when it comes to eating enough, and making sure that your body is on some type of consistent hunger clock, right? Um, Hunger clock is something that I pretty much made up where you mentioned even for you, RC, you're busy. You got a lot going on. You have your breakfast. Next thing you know, it's 6 p.m. and you're about to have your next meal for the day, right?
Or 9 p.m. or
Or
10 or 11 p.m.
yeah. Yeah. And then even worse if you have coffee, because that just mutes your appetite, which isn't a good thing, guys. My
I
dad, he's
didn't know that. That's a little tidbit right there. Coffee mutes your appetite, really.
Yeah, which I know a lot of people may think, oh, good, because then if I don't have an appetite, like I won't. But it's again, we want to think about hunger hormones, right? So our body is more like a thermostat than it is a calculator, right? So the less we eat, the longer periods we go without eating, right? And we're also sedentary on top of that, you may not feel quote unquote hungry, right? But then you get up, you start moving, all of a sudden you're craving, all of these foods all at once because your body's trying to make up for the lack of calories that you didn't have or nutrients. So when we give our body consistent the proper amount of nutrition, which you want to eat at what we call maintenance calories, which is the amount of calories that you don't lose weight on, you don't gain weight on, you just maintain. It's your body's happy spot, and there's many ways to kind of go about finding that. But that would be like the tangible, okay, well, how much does my body actually need? You would need to find your maintenance calories. Okay. It's different for everybody. When you're eating enough calories to maintain, then your hunger hormones are more in balance, right? Your body can signal, the ghrelin, when it's time for your next meal because your body's used to eating 3 meals a day, 12, 3, 6 p.m. or 9:30, 4:30, 7 p.m. Like, it doesn't need to be on the dot, but your body gets used to it, right? So then you know when it's time to eat, you eat, and then your hunger hormones balance out, right? Same thing with leptin. Leptin regulates your appetite. So if you're under eating, right, your body is going to try to, balance that out. It's not going to hit you right then and there, but it will hit you either at night or on the weekends. And then you're overeating in those calories, right? So when we're eating enough, we actually balance these hormones where there isn't a lot of that inner chatter, right? Of, what do I eat? And like, oh my God, and all of this stuff. And I also don't want to negate that, the mental and emotional piece as well, because there is like a little bit of that, 10 to 20% of that, right? If you've coped for 20 years with food, you know, you got to still shift it. You still got to rewire
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely you're right. There's the habitual component, there's the habit
Right.
component, and then there's that craving component. And I think what you're talking about, and this was, we had this as a previous discussion as well, and this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to dive into the subject today, was the one of the things we talked about, was the craving component of that. And you're saying if you balance the hunger hormones, the craving part starts to go away because you no longer need, your body stops enjoying, sugars and things like that. It doesn't need it as much because it's got what it needs. So it's not like giving you this compulsion to go
Right.
and just, consume, consume, consume.
If you're not feeling satiated after your meal, then there's probably something missing. Like, you want to enjoy your food. You want to make sure that you feel satisfied. If you don't feel satisfied, it's going to hit you later on. So being satiated, and that's your hunger hormones, leptin's being like, good job. We're satiated, right? And then the habitual piece, right? Like, if you're, 7 o'clock on the dot, you're in the kitchen looking for sweets and all of that stuff. It's like, what are you actually craving, and how can you address that craving in a different way? So yeah.
That's really interesting. So that the habitual component I can speak to a little bit. This is a lot of the work that I do, with neurocognitive, like trauma work that we do. And that is, what are the habits that we've created that are oftentimes their coping mechanisms, right? It's
Right.
not about breaking that habit so much as it's not the sugar that gives you that sense of security, that coping mechanism that you're exercising that coping mechanism for. It's not actually the sugar. It's that it happened at the same time, and that your brain and body knows exactly how it's going to feel. It's not
Mm-hmm.
looking for the sugar, it's looking for the sense of security, of sameness.
Mm-hmm.
So when you brought up the idea of the, what did you call it, the meal clock, the hunger clock, the eating clock,
Hunger clock. Yeah.
hunger clock. So when you talk about sort of the importance of that, there's this extra layer that's working on in our nervous system and in our brain to create a sense of security, because it then knows exactly what to expect and when to expect it. That's where, by the way, every single addiction comes from, hands down, is that it's not the alcohol or the nicotine or the drugs or whatever it is you're addicted to, right? Sugar and candy, or even the gym. It's not,
Mhm.
the addiction doesn't come from the reward. We get rewarded. Yes, we get the dopamine. Our body likes the dopamine. The addiction comes from the sense of security we get because we know exactly how we're going to feel when we consume that thing or participate in that activity.
Right.
So I love this idea of the hunger clock and switching the time and switching what you're putting into your body then, because you still get the same sense of security, but imagine you're getting it with the healthy foods and the healthy
Right.
timing and the balanced hormones. And I don't know, this is just huge. I know we have just cracked the shell on this. I know this is, barely scraping the surface. So, can you tell us a little bit? I know we've only got a little bit of time left, but can you tell us a little bit about the workshop and what people can expect and what it's going to look like? And I don't know, just tell us all the things.
Yes, I'm very excited for this workshop. It's going to be a total of 3 weeks, and one call a week where I'm going to be walking you guys through getting your nutrition in check, which I think a lot of us want going into the new year, right? Especially if you want to work on your mental health, you want to have better productivity, better mental health, better overall sense of control over your life. Like nutrition's going to be one of the things. So, week one, we are going into really how to build a plate, right? And building your own grocery list and really simplifying your plate, simplifying nutrition. Going into week two, I believe that we're going into like the like habitual piece of it. I actually have like notes here. So okay, perfect. So going into week two, we're going to be going into regaining control of your eating habits and muscle, right? You know, like I think a lot of times we're going, just do it for me, just tell me what to eat. But I'm very big on teaching you how to fish, not just giving you the fish, because that's how you're going to be able to really have that for life. So that is what we're going to be going into call two. And then call three, we're actually going to be going into behavior change and the actual, identity, habits, outcomes, and how to actually change your behaviors and your habits to support the long-term changes that you want to make with your eating habits, with your relationship with food, your body, and creating a new sense of security with the new approach to nutrition versus, kind of your relationship with food up until this point. So it's going to be great. We're going to be doing tons of exercises, workshopping, and yeah, if nutrition and your health and wellness is one of those things you've been wanting to get in check, and you have a history of fad dieting and you've tried all the diets, but you're ready to shift from like a diet mentality to nourishing your body and fueling your body, then this is the workshop for you.
I love all of that. I'm very excited for it. I know we had this discussion about what we were going to include and what people need, and I think that this is absolutely like a perfect fundamental layer for people to start diving into this. And I also love how you present information. I will say that from our previous work together in with your masterclass, it's very clear, concise information. It's easy to digest, if I may throw a pun in there.
Literally.
But it's not overwhelming. And I think a lot of the reason why people, don't really tackle their physical health, especially when dealing with trauma, is that their life feels like it's chaos, and the health component feels insurmountable. It can feel very overwhelming and just too big to tackle.
Mhm.
So I love that this is really, again with the puns, I'm so sorry, but it's like bite
No, I
size.
love it.
It's but it's bite size, it's actionable. These are real takeaways people get to go home with and say, okay, wait a minute, this is going to make a real change. And it's 3 weeks long, so it's completely doable. And it's in January, which is the month everybody takes on all those New Year's resolutions and wants to make these monumental changes. And this is a huge foundational component. So I'm very, very excited for it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what does it look like when your body's out of check? I know you talked about it a little bit in terms of like the binge eating, and you were when you were in college, there was sort of the party lifestyle, which may have been driven by some mental health stuff, or just young and growing and blooming into an adult kind of thing. But what what are the signs? What do people need to know? What to look for? What does it look like, I guess? Yeah, I guess what does it look like
Yeah.
when your body's out of check, like when out of whack and needs a reset, a sort of a nutrition reset?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is obviously sugar cravings. Like if you are craving sugar a lot too, that's the first thing. Is it's blood sugar that we're looking at. Blood sugar is such an easy fix too. It's stress, right? It's a lack of enough nutrients. When we talk about nutrients, we're talking about protein, fiber, healthy fats, your macronutrients. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of times people think that they're like, you know, that again, it's out of their control. They don't have willpower, but sugar cravings is really the result of dysregulated blood sugar and stress and other things, but it's totally controllable. The second thing is like sleep. Okay. So if you are having insomnia, if you're waking up multiple times throughout the night, not to pee, but because you just are having a very hard time sleeping, then we want to look at your calorie intake. Are you under eating? This is a big thing I see with a lot of women is not eating enough calories. Um, eating below 1,000, 1,200, even 1,500 calories a day, and, relying on caffeine, also stressed out, right? And then that will affect sleep. So those are the first two things: is stress, sleep. And then I would say the third thing would really be, you know, just like the mental health symptoms, right? So anxiety, depression, even. And obviously take this with a grain of salt. Like there's context that has to go into everything, but feeling sluggish, brain foggy, anxious, just like, just not good in your body, right? You feel bloated, you feel icky, you feel all the things. You find yourself calling yourself the F word a lot, right? Like a lot of times when we use the F word, it's not because we actually, you know, are feeling, the word fat, right? It's because we're feeling bloated, we're feeling uncomfortable in our bodies, and then we weaponize that word to kind of like, just
Yeah.
weaponize it. So those would be the top three things: is cravings, sleep. Like even when you're on your period, where you're getting your cycle, you're going to crave sugar, but that's just because your body needs certain nutrients, right? Magnesium, more calories. Your body burns like 400 more calories in your luteal phase, which is the 12 to 14 days before your bleed, right? So it's all of these little things that will show up in your body. Poor sleep, and then obviously mental health symptoms. So anxiety, brain fog, sluggishness, acne, right? Like that's a big one. I struggled with acne. I spent thousands of dollars on esthetician products, and it was gut, even though I eat healthy, right? Quote unquote. But it was little things in my diet and my stress, right? So those would be the main kind of red flags that I would look for. Um, and probably also like a irregular period, because our period as women is the number one health like report card thing. Like that's the first thing that we're looking at. And if you have no period, irregular periods, maybe you have PCOS, right? A healthy period is the report card of your health as a woman. So those would be like the main core pillars.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those you touched on are there's just a huge overlap of a lot of those symptoms just come along with trauma. We've just sort of
Yeah.
accepted that, oh, well, we're traumatized. Well, then we have more stress and anxiety because our window of
Mhm.
tolerance is smaller, our cortisol is higher. Oh, we're overweight. Yeah, because we're holding on to a bunch of cortisol that our body doesn't know what to do with. So it stores it, right? Um, and then yeah, PCOS is a huge, women who, especially with sexual trauma, we hold tension in our body and it does create a lot of disorders or autoimmune disorders or diseases and things like that. PCOS being one of the top, disproportionately high amongst women with trauma. So it's very interesting that this big long list of things that we associate as trauma symptoms or effects of trauma are also something that can be corrected or at least rebalanced with nutrition. So
Yeah.
I think this is a very, I think this is creating a lot of hope, I think, for people who have tried what feels like tried everything that just wasn't designed for them, right? It was designed to either mimic what they see on a magazine cover or to
Right.
sell supplements, right? The
Right.
pseudoscience out there that sells supplements and the next product and this and that by celebrities who maybe have just been blessed with like super fast metabolisms, or maybe they just don't eat. We don't know. We don't know their lifestyle
Hmm.
habits, right? But claiming that it's this product that, you know, has created their physique when it could be genetics, lack of trauma, good metabolism, or bad habits, right? So I think that they're really we really do need to pull the veil back on that for people to really understand. It's not just the filters, right? It's not just the products. There is a lot of pseudoscience out there that has us convinced that we need to eat less than 1,200 calories, that we can survive on 2 cups of coffee and a couple of crackers a day, or that on the opposite end of the spectrum too is that there's body positivity. I'm for it, right? I'm pro body positivity. I'm pro feeling good in your body being proud of who you are, that bodies come in all shapes and sizes. I am all for that. What I can't get behind is, and I want to be careful how I say this, right? This is not, there's no fat shaming. There's no, shaming people for whatever it is, how they're born, what their genetics are, right? There's none of that. Absolutely. Everyone is welcome.
Mhm.
One thing that can be controversial that I kind of think we need to tiptoe around, at least gently, is that if you're uncomfortable in your body, you've got to be, you've got to decide that you're also uncomfortable in your lifestyle. That there
Yeah.
has to be, and that can come off really harsh. If you're not comfortable in your, you better be as comfortable as you're in your body as you are with your lifestyle. That can come across as really tough love. And it's not about, shaming someone for their lifestyle, but it really is understanding what is your lifestyle doing to your body.
Right.
And, and that's something we can regain control over.
Yeah. It's truth, truth hurts sometimes, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, we got to take responsibility and that's how we take our power back, right? And like it's like how you said, like there's always deeper layers to it, especially with trauma, like you said. Even from like a spiritual perspective, right? Like holding on to more weight. I mean, body fat is a way for our body to protect itself, right? So sexual assault victims, that could be a way that our body's just trying to protect us, right? With
Absolutely true.
the extra weight, right? Or people who struggle to put on weight, right? If their goal is to gain weight, there's also things that go into that. So if we can just control like the physical world things that we can, it gives us leverage to then kind of dive deeper into what might be like emotional root causes of certain things and
Yeah.
how can we take control back? And nutrition, I'm very big on like simplifying it. Like I think a lot of things I hear from people is like it's expensive and like, it's just expensive to eat healthy. And it's like,
Junk food is expensive.
it's
My boyfriend has 3 kids. When they give me a list of, like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm like, hey, all right, I'm going to the store. What do you people want? Like, what does everybody want? I get Doritos, Oreos, they go down the list of all the junk food, and I'll spend a $300 grocery bill for like 2 bags of Doritos, maybe some cookies. Like every once in a while, we get this stuff for the kids, and it's like
Mhm.
$120, and it's
Yeah.
gone in a weekend. Junk food's expensive.
Yeah. And the
Green
long
food,
term, yeah. Yeah. And it's also the long term effects of it too, as well, of it's more expensive in the future as well, right? Thinking about like hospital bills and your doctor trying to put you on Ozempic and like that shot and like all of these things, right?
well, and that's the thing. I think people like, there's the convenience fee. We in this Western world, we pay a convenience fee. We pay for the convenience of the drive-through, for the pre-packaged or pre-made foods, at the
Mm.
grocery store that are probably full of salt and sugars and all kinds of preservatives and things like that. And so that's when I talk about being comfortable in your body and being comfortable with your lifestyle and finding that balance. That's what I'm talking about when I say lifestyle,
Right.
is like, what are you sacrificing for the sake of convenience? Yes, you're busy. Yes, you're stressed. But when you enjoy the process of eating and you give yourself the opportunity to enjoy the process of cooking and preparing your foods and making that a thing, I think that that's a component. It's just a perspective shift that I think people
Yeah.
could benefit from.
100%. It's just a perspective shift, right? And it's the stories that you tell yourself. And my favorite quote is you can either defend your limitations or you can defend your health or your vision. So if you find yourself, well, I can't, or I don't know how, it's like you're defending your limitations, right? And you can choose to defend your limitations or you can choose to defend your health, right? And what you do want to do and what is doable for you, like getting tuna cans or even starting with frozen foods, right? Like you don't need to go to Whole Foods and ball out. If you need to go to Walmart and get frozen steamed vegetables, like start and rotisserie chicken and steamable rice, like start there. Like just start where your feet are and then you'll gain the confidence for like the bigger things over time.
Yeah, I love that quote, defending your limitations or defending your goals. Um, I have there. there's something I've worked again. I do tend to throw a little bit of tough love at my clients sometimes. Sometimes it's a little shift that they need to
Same.
hear. Sometimes it's like a 2x4 upside the head. Sometimes it comes in pretty hard. But one of the things that I often tell my clients is stop defending your diagnosis. The
Mm,
I can't do this because I have, all
mhm,
these D's on their report card, this disorder, that disorder, whatever they are, whether it's, you know, like manic depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, PTSD, CPTSD. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but my perspective on it is that if we stop looking at those as disorders and we instead take out the word disorder and put in the word response to. So complex post-traumatic stress response to what? Now we
mhm,
have a source. Now we can kind of, we know where to tackle that. And
mhm.
if you're defending your diagnosis, you're going to stay stuck in that. If you're defending your limitations of what you believe to be your limitations, you're going to stay stuck in that. But once we start to shift that perspective, and I know mindset shift is not something that is easy for trauma survivors to just immediately have. We have to train, and this is not because they're stubborn or stuck in victim mentality. It's because survival mode literally shuts off anything new. It
Mhm.
only knows survival mode will, the way our brain works in survival mode, it will choose a pain that it knows over anything new that it's never experienced. So a new idea is very difficult. A new quote mindset shift is not safe to our subconscious mind, which is our brain and our nervous system. It's not safe. So it's not going to let us just be like, oh, wait a minute, this cool new idea might work. Okay, let me try that. Right. We do
Right.
have to ease it into it. And we've got to balance that. And really, the place you have to start is physiologically. Your
Right.
brain, rule number one is no dying. Your brain's going to keep you alive. It's going to choose what it needs to keep you alive. Well, if we support that endeavor in the brain, which is to keep you alive and keep you healthy, it then opens the door for us to work on the emotional components. It then gives us the opportunity to grow and work on our growth and our future. So
Right.
this is so huge. I'm
Yes.
excited. I'm so, so, so excited. I know I could talk for hours about this. We are a little bit over time, but I don't want to take up your whole day. But is there anything else that people just need to know? Like, is there anything that you just want everyone to know? Um, just wherever they're at, if you could shout it from a mountaintop with a megaphone.
Yeah, I would say to just take it one step at a time, like one step at a time, especially this time of year. It's so easy to be hyper motivated and want to overhaul your entire lifestyle overnight, set all these lofty goals, but just start again where your feet are. Start with one step, take another step, and just take it moment by moment and remind yourself that when you find yourself getting overwhelmed and you're thinking about all the steps, return to just the step that you're at, right? It's like the saying, don't look at the whole staircase, just look at the next step. And that would be my biggest advice is to just, take it step by step, 1% better every day. Because if you zoom out, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that's a really big difference versus trying to go 0 to 100 every 3 to 6 months and then not really seeing that change that you want to see.
Absolutely. I think there is this desperation for, we want immediate relief. And so we think that in order to overcome this huge thing that's been this black cloud that's been following us around our whole lives, we feel like in order to overcome this huge thing, that the solution must also be this massively huge and complicated and overwhelming thing. But it's not. Sometimes it really is just one simple thing. And I think that absolutely starting with our brain gut connection and nutrition is an an absolutely manageable step for people to take, which is why we're starting with it. This is why you are our first workshop in our workshop series now. So in January is perfect timing for everyone. And I think it's the foundational step that everyone needs. So
Yes, I
awesome. And tell us all where we can find you online.
Yes. So you can follow me on Instagram at flexi.fitness. So FLEXI.fitness, or our coaching page at embody her, just spelled embody her _health coaching if you want to learn a little bit more about, our service and what we provide. That's the best place to find me, is on Instagram.
Awesome. We will make sure all of those links and everything are down below in the description, because this will be up on YouTube as well as our website and everything as well. So awesome. Alexis, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to, so the workshop, by the way, just for details, we start on January 8th. Is that correct?
Yep. January 8th.
Awesome. Awesome. Do we need to bring anything? What do we need to have handy at this workshop? Do we need to bring
Just a pen, paper, an open mind, and no distractions.
That's perfect. I absolutely love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alexis. And I look forward to this workshop starting in just about a week.
Yes, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me, Archie.